The message arrived while I was standing beside my wedding cake, with my husband's hand resting gently against my back. "What did you do?" Just 3 seconds later, another text appeared. "Claire is completely losing it." Then a third one followed. "The country club is talking about shutting the whole event down." I stared at my phone screen as soft jazz music drifted through the ballroom. Around me, guests were smiling, chatting, and enjoying the evening. Someone tapped a champagne glass to get attention. Across the room, one of my former Air Force coworkers was helping my 72-year-old neighbor cut into a tray of cannoli. And in that moment, a frightening realization finally hit me. My father had never expected me to stop rescuing them. Not when he forgot my birthdays while I was deployed. Not when he skipped my promotion ceremony. Not even when my own family chose my sister's engagement party over my wedding. Because in their minds, I would always return. I would always forgive. And I would always be the one paying the price. I looked at the glowing screen again as another message from my father appeared. "Please answer me." A slow smile crossed my face. Then I typed 6 words that immediately ended the conversation. "You chose her. Live with it." What none of them understood was that my revenge had started months earlier, long before they realized there was even a battle being fought. My name is Evelyn Carter, and this is the story of how my family missed my wedding and lost everything on the very same night. Most people imagine military officers as loud, commanding people who naturally take charge of every room they enter. My father certainly believed that. Growing up in rural Georgia, he often told people that his daughters would either become beauty queens or disappointments. By the age of 16, Claire had already become the beauty queen. Around that same age, I became the disappointment. That was also when I learned how to disassemble and reassemble an M4 rifle faster than most of the boys in ROTC. Claire had long blonde hair that bounced whenever she laughed. She had a talent for becoming the center of attention no matter where she went. Men bought her drinks before she was even old enough to order them legally. Teachers excused late assignments because she smiled sweetly and apologized. When she crashed Dad's truck at 19, somehow he ended up apologizing to her. I was the complete opposite. Taller, quieter, more disciplined. Dad used to joke that I walked like I was heading into combat, even when I was simply carrying groceries into the house. By 23, I had earned my commission in the United States Air Force. By 34, I was serving as a major and managing logistics operations involving more money in a single month than my father had earned during his entire career. Yet none of that meant anything back home. To my father, Claire was still his greatest achievement. I was simply useful. I learned that difference very early in life. When Mom needed surgery and insurance refused to cover the specialist in Atlanta, I immediately transferred $12,000 to make sure she got the treatment she needed. Later, Dad told relatives that Claire had organized everything. While Claire posted motivational quotes on social media, I spent 4 straight nights beside Mom's hospital bed, sleeping upright in an uncomfortable chair. When Dad's construction company nearly failed after 2 terrible investments, I quietly helped refinance part of his debt using professional contacts I had built through years of careful financial planning. But when people asked what happened, Dad simply said the market improved. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering, Claire remained the star of the show. And I remained the person everyone called when something went wrong. Still, I kept hoping things would eventually change. Maybe that's what daughters do. Maybe we keep trying long after logic tells us to stop. I met Daniel 2 years before our wedding while stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. He was a flight surgeon with tired green eyes and the calmest voice I had ever heard. Unlike most people, he never felt threatened by me. He never joked about my demanding schedule. He never called me intimidating. On our 3rd date, I apologized for checking work emails during dinner. Daniel smiled and said, "You don't have to make yourself smaller around me, Evelyn." I almost cried right there in the restaurant. Daniel understood silence. He understood responsibility. And he understood the loneliness that comes from spending years handling impossible situations while pretending everything is fine. When he proposed on a quiet beach in North Carolina during leave, there were no photographers and no audience. Just the sound of the ocean wind and his slightly trembling hands holding the ring. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that life could be peaceful. We mailed our wedding invitations 4 months ahead of time because military schedules can be complicated. I chose cream-colored invitations with navy blue lettering. Simple. Elegant. Exactly our style. Mom cried when she received hers. Claire replied with a text 3 days later. So formal, LOL. Dad called me only once during the entire planning process. You sure about Memorial Day weekend? He asked. People travel. We checked with everyone important, I answered carefully. He grunted. Seems expensive for one day. That was the entire conversation. No questions about the ceremony. No excitement. No offer to walk me down the aisle. Just mild annoyance, as if I had informed him about roadwork near his favorite fishing spot. After the call ended, Daniel noticed my expression. He doesn't deserve you, he said quietly. I hated how much I wanted him to be wrong. About 2 weeks later, Dad hosted a family barbecue at his house. The Georgia heat was brutal. The air felt heavy and sticky. Country music played from old speakers near the deck, while Dad stood at the grill acting like the star of a television commercial. Claire arrived 40 minutes late wearing white linen pants and oversized sunglasses. Her new boyfriend, Tyler, walked behind her carrying an expensive bottle of champagne. Tyler came from serious money. His family owned multiple car dealerships throughout Alabama. Dad practically lit up every time Tyler spoke. Halfway through dinner, Claire tapped her wine glass for attention. We have some news, she announced. Dad instantly smiled. Tyler stood up, adjusted his collar, and wrapped an arm around Claire. We're engaged. The entire family exploded with excitement. Mom gasped. My Aunt Linda started crying. Dad slapped Tyler on the back so hard I thought he might spill his beer. Claire raised her hand and showed off a diamond ring large enough to catch sunlight from space. Then she dropped another surprise. We already booked the engagement party, she said excitedly. Memorial Day weekend at the Savannah Crest Country Club. My stomach immediately tightened. That was my wedding weekend. I looked directly at Claire, waiting for her to laugh. Waiting for her to say she was joking. Instead, she smiled at me. The venue only had that Saturday available, she said with a casual shrug. Silence slowly spread around the table. Dad cleared his throat. Well, he said with an awkward laugh, looks like we've got a busy weekend. Nobody defended me. Nobody even seemed surprised. And sitting there beneath cheap patio lights while my father celebrated my sister's engagement, I finally understood something I should have realized years ago. They hadn't forgotten about my wedding. They had simply decided it wasn't as important. A few days later, Dad called while I was reviewing logistics reports at Peterson Space Force Base. I answered the phone because, despite everything, a small part of me still hoped things might be different. Listen, he said immediately, skipping any greeting. People feel like they're being forced to choose. I quietly closed my office door. They are choosing, I replied. That's not fair. No, I said calmly. What's unfair is acting like this happened by accident. Dad let out a frustrated breath. Your sister is finally happy. So am I. Silence filled the line. Then he said something that stayed with me for months afterward. She needs support more than you do. I slowly leaned back in my chair. There it was. The truth. Claire received love because she always needed something. I was overlooked because I had learned how to survive without help. Strong daughters eventually become invisible. I ended the conversation politely, but after that day something changed inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't emotional. I became focused. Strategic. The week of the wedding finally arrived under heavy spring humidity and dark clouds rolling across the Savannah sky. Daniel's parents arrived from Colorado 2 days early. In less than 48 hours, they showed me more kindness than my own father had shown in years. His mother carefully steamed my wedding dress while softly humming to herself. His father fixed loose decorations before anyone even asked. Nobody complained. Nobody competed for attention. Nobody created problems. It felt unfamiliar, almost suspicious. The night before the wedding, Mom called me while quietly crying in her bathroom so Dad wouldn't hear her. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I sat alone on the hotel balcony overlooking the river. Are you coming tomorrow? There was a long pause. Then I heard her shaky breath. Your father thinks it would embarrass Claire if attendance gets divided. The words were spoken softly, but somehow that made them hurt even more. I closed my eyes. I understand. Evelyn. It's okay, Mom. But it wasn't okay. And both of us knew it. The next morning, I stood inside the bridal suite carrying myself with the same posture and discipline the military had taught me. Outside, guests slowly filled the chapel. Or at least some of them did. Large sections remained painfully empty on my side. No father. No sister. No cousins. Almost none of the family I had spent years helping and protecting. Only silence and vacant chairs. Before the ceremony began, one of my Air Force colleagues gently squeezed my shoulder. The people who truly matter came. I nodded politely. But as the music began and the chapel doors slowly opened, a painful truth settled deep inside me. My family wasn't absent because they couldn't come. They were absent because they chose not to come. The chapel itself was beautiful in a simple, understated way. Soft candlelight danced against cream-colored walls. White roses lined both sides of the aisle. Daniel had insisted on spending extra because he knew how much I appreciated elegance without excess. Outside, Savannah rain tapped softly against stained glass windows, turning the afternoon light into shades of silver and blue. Yet all I could focus on were the empty seats. There is a special kind of heartbreak that comes from staring at places where loved ones should have been. The front row on my side remained almost completely empty. Only Mrs. Harrove, my mother's elderly neighbor, sat there holding tissues with trembling hands. Behind her sat 3 Air Force officers in dress uniform and a retired colonel who had once mentored me during a deployment in Qatar. That was all. Meanwhile, Daniel's side was overflowing. Friends, relatives, former coworkers, laughter, support, love. His family looked at me with genuine affection. Strangely, that made the absence of my own family hurt even more. The organ music began. I stood at the back entrance holding my bouquet while the wedding coordinator leaned closer. Ready? No, I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. Military service teaches you something important. Sometimes your body keeps moving forward long after your heart wants to stop. The chapel doors opened. Everyone stood. And for one brief moment, the pain eased. Because Daniel was waiting at the altar. The second he saw me, his eyes filled with emotion. Not because of my dress. Not because of the ceremony. Not because of the decorations. Because it was me. That realization nearly broke me right there. I began walking alone down the aisle with my shoulders straight and my head held high. Exactly the posture my father used to criticize when I was younger. Walk like a normal girl, Evelyn, he would say. You march around like you're invading a country. Now that same posture was the only thing keeping me together. As I passed the empty front row, I forced myself not to look. Just keep moving. Don't stop. Don't break. Keep walking. The moment I reached the altar, Daniel immediately took both of my hands. You're here, he whispered. Such simple words. Yet somehow they felt like salvation. Years later, certain parts of the ceremony remain crystal clear in my memory. The warmth of Daniel's hands. The faint scent of rain drifting through the old wooden doors. The sound of Mrs. Harrove openly crying during our vows. And the slight tremble in Daniel's voice when he said, "You will never have to earn love with me." That sentence nearly shattered me. Because my entire life had been spent doing exactly that. Working. Proving. Sacrificing. Providing. Giving. And somehow still feeling unwanted. After the ceremony, everyone gathered at a restored ballroom along the riverfront a few blocks away. The reception wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. Candlelit tables. Navy linen runners. A jazz trio performing near the windows overlooking the Savannah River. During photographs, Daniel kept trying to make me laugh because he could tell I was drifting into darker thoughts. You know, he whispered while the photographer adjusted the lighting, your father is missing some excellent bourbon right now. A small smile escaped me. There it is, the photographer immediately said. Hold that smile. For a little while, I managed to forget everything. Almost. Then my phone vibrated. Mom. I stared at the screen before answering. The sounds of the reception faded behind me as I stepped into a quieter hallway near the ballroom entrance. Her voice sounded rushed. Evelyn, honey. In the background, I could hear loud music. Claire's engagement party. I just wanted to say congratulations. She spoke so quietly it sounded like she was afraid someone would overhear. Thank you. There was another pause. Then she broke down. I should have been there. The guilt in her voice was impossible to miss. I leaned against the hallway wall and closed my eyes. You made your choice. No, she said immediately. Your father made that choice for everyone. Honestly, that sounded exactly like something he would do. In the background, I could hear Claire laughing loudly. I heard Dad talking. Glasses clinking. Music playing. Mom lowered her voice even more. Your father said it would look disrespectful if family members kept leaving Claire's party to attend your wedding. Of course he did. Appearance mattered. Protecting Claire mattered. Claire's feelings always mattered. A deeper coldness settled inside me. Not anger. Anger burns quickly. This felt permanent. I have to go, Mom whispered suddenly. Your father is looking for me. Then, just before hanging up, she said one final thing. I hope one day you understand that I loved both of you. The call ended. I stared at my reflection in the dark ballroom window for several moments. Then I quietly turned off my phone. The second I returned to the reception, Daniel noticed something had changed. What happened? Nothing important, I lied. He studied me carefully. Daniel had spent years treating trauma patients. He recognized pain even when people tried to hide it. Without saying another word, he took my hand and led me onto the dance floor just as the jazz trio began playing an old Frank Sinatra song. We swayed together beneath warm amber lights while conversations blended into the background. You know what I think? He asked softly. What? I think your family spent so many years calling you the strong one that they forgot strong people still need love. I swallowed hard. My father thinks I don't need anyone. That's because he mistakes dependence for love. I looked up at him. And if he never changes? Daniel gently tightened his arm around my waist. Then he loses you. Simple. Direct. True. As the evening continued, the reception settled into something warm and comfortable. My commanding officer eventually stood to give a toast. It turned out to be far more emotional than anyone expected. To Major Evelyn Carter, he said while raising his glass, one of the most dependable leaders I've ever worked with and one of the most stubborn women alive. Laughter spread through the room. She spends her life taking care of everyone around her, he continued. So tonight it's wonderful to see someone finally taking care of her. Applause followed. And suddenly I had to look away before tears formed. Because people who weren't related to me had spent years appreciating sacrifices my own father barely noticed. Later that night, Daniel and I stood beside our wedding cake while guests gathered around holding champagne glasses. The cake was exactly what we wanted. Simple. 3 tiers. White buttercream. Fresh flowers. Nothing excessive. Someone yelled for us to kiss before cutting it. Daniel laughed and leaned closer. Then my phone vibrated. Once. Twice. 3 times. I frowned. Daniel glanced toward me. Everything okay? I don't know. I pulled the phone from my clutch and looked down. Dad, what did you do? A second message appeared almost instantly. Claire is screaming. Then another. The country club manager says the payments were canceled. Around us, guests continued smiling and celebrating. But deep inside me, everything became completely still. Because at that exact moment, my family was finally learning a lesson they should have understood years ago. They were about to discover who had really been holding their world together. For several seconds, I stared at the messages while the sounds of the ballroom faded into the background. What is it? Daniel asked. I slowly looked at him. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because after 34 years of disappointment, neglect, sacrifice, and being taken for granted, the moment I had quietly prepared for had finally arrived. I think, I said calmly, my family just learned the truth. Daniel studied my expression. He knew the difference between anger and certainty. And this wasn't anger. This was certainty. Another call came from Dad. I declined it. Then Claire called. Declined. Then Tyler. That one almost made me laugh. Meanwhile, less than 5 miles away, my sister's glamorous engagement party was falling apart in real time. And nobody there yet understood why. Daniel leaned closer. Want to tell me what's happening? I slipped the phone back into my clutch. In a minute, I said. First, let's cut the cake. His eyebrows lifted briefly. Then he smiled. He understood exactly who he had married. We cut the cake while applause filled the ballroom. Cameras flashed. Another bottle of champagne was opened near the dance floor. And through it all, my phone continued vibrating endlessly against my wrist. When the celebration settled down, Daniel quietly guided me toward the private bridal suite attached to the ballroom. The moment the door closed behind us, I finally released a long breath. Then I handed him my phone. Daniel read through the messages in silence before finally looking up. What payments? He asked. I slowly sat down on the velvet sofa beside the window. All of them. His eyes widened immediately. It was finally time for the truth. For years, my father told everyone that he had survived multiple financial disasters through determination, good timing, and family support. That was the story he shared. The reality was very different. Nearly 6 years earlier, Dad's construction business had started falling apart after 2 disastrous investments and a tax problem he kept hidden from everyone except Mom. At the same time, Claire was sinking deeper into credit card debt because she refused to give up a lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. And because I was the dependable daughter, the responsible daughter, the military daughter, I quietly stepped in. At first, it was only meant to be temporary. A mortgage payment here. A debt consolidation loan there. Help with tuition expenses for Claire's son after her divorce. Dad constantly promised that things would improve soon. They never did. Instead, temporary help became routine. Routine became expectation. And expectation became entitlement. I never told anyone how much money I was contributing. I wasn't looking for praise. I wasn't asking for gratitude. I simply wanted peace. I wanted stability. I wanted a family that stayed together. But over time, I began noticing something painful. The more I gave, the less I was appreciated. Dad praised Claire endlessly for attending family dinners while I transferred thousands of dollars from overseas deployment locations without even receiving a simple thank you message. One time, Claire posted online, "Family always supports each other." That same week, I paid her overdue car payment so it wouldn't be repossessed. Nobody ever asked how I managed to help so often. Nobody really wanted to know. People are comfortable accepting sacrifice as long as they don't have to acknowledge it. Daniel slowly sat across from me. And tonight, he asked. I folded my hands calmly. Tonight, every automatic payment stopped. He stared at me. Then understanding appeared on his face. The country club. I nodded. 3 months earlier, after Claire announced her engagement party, Dad had quietly asked me for temporary help covering the deposits until Tyler's family reimbursed the costs. I agreed. Not because I wanted to support Claire. By then, I had already started planning my exit. Every payment. Every loan guarantee. Every emergency transfer. Every financial account I used to stabilize my father's collapsing finances. Everything had been carefully documented. And everything was connected to one scheduled email. That email was programmed to send automatically at exactly 8:45 p.m. tonight, the precise moment Daniel and I cut our wedding cake. The recipients included Dad, Claire, Tyler, their attorney, and the financial office at Savannah Crest Country Club. Attached to the email was something my father never expected to see. Proof. Years and years of proof. Bank statements, wire transfers, mortgage records, tax settlements, business loan guarantees, credit card payments, educational trust fund distributions. Every dollar I had quietly spent while my family treated me like an inconvenience. Daniel leaned back in complete disbelief. You paid for all of that? I let out a small humorless laugh. Mostly during deployments. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then my phone rang again. Dad. This time I answered. The second the call connected, I heard shouting in the background. Claire was screaming. Dad sounded completely panicked. What the hell did you do? His voice was shaking. I had never heard him sound like that before. Meanwhile, I remained perfectly calm. I'm at my wedding reception, Dad. The country club says the payment account was frozen. Cancelled, I corrected softly. Silence. Then he asked, "What account?" That question almost broke my heart. Because even now, after everything, he still didn't know where the money had come from. You really thought your business survived by itself? I asked quietly. Silence again. Longer this time. Then Tyler's voice appeared in the background. Wait. What does she mean? Immediately, Claire snapped back. She's being dramatic. Same Claire. Always the same. Dad lowered his voice. The email, Evelyn. What is all of this? There it was. The moment. The exact second my father realized the daughter he ignored had been carrying the entire family for years. I paid your tax lien in 2021, I said calmly. I covered the second mortgage after your refinancing failed. I paid off Claire's tuition debt. I funded Jacob's private school account after her divorce. And 3 months ago, I personally guaranteed Tyler's business expansion loan. Silence. Absolute silence. Then Tyler spoke again. You guaranteed what? Apparently, Claire had forgotten to mention that detail. The arguing exploded instantly. Voices overlapped. People shouted. Accusations flew in every direction. Dad suddenly sounded smaller. Weaker. You were paying for everything? I looked out through the rain-covered ballroom windows at the lights reflecting across the dark Sava.